In these perilous times, see from current events how biblical prophecy is coming to pass in front of our eyes. You're watching In the Last Days, the program that looks at Israel and the end times with teaching from a Hebraic perspective. With Martin and Natalie Blackham, thank you to our friends and partners who make this program possible. Now, here's Martin and Natalie.
Shalom, dear friend. This is wonderful to be with you today. This is In the Last Days TV program, and my name is Natalie Blackham. And it's a great privilege to be able to give you news and interviews from the land of Israel. I know that some of you can't come, and it's a joy for us to be able to do program, and you can see what's happening in Israel, and you are in your living room and enjoying to have a taste of Israel. Now today we have again a very good friend. Shalom.
Shalom, shalom.
Rabbi Shmuel Bowman. We've done already some program together, and today he's coming to speak about Operation Life Shield, which is something very important. Shmuel Bowman helped Israeli causes since 1993 by strategically transforming ideas and vision into concrete and tangible results. Shmuel joined Operation Life Shield at the time of his founding in 2007 and is now the executive director of Operation Life Shield. And he raises funds and awareness around the world, and he's responsible for the activities here in Israel. He's including the placement of bomb shelters, and this is important in the town who are threatened by enemy's rockets. Now, Shmuel is also regarded as an expert in the field of passive defense and humanitarian NGO relief efforts. So it's very important in the life of the civilians and the people of Israel here. So, Rabbi Shmuel, it's again a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for the work, first of all, that you are doing. Thank you also to make the Christian being able to do something concretely in Israel. And explain a bit to the people what is Operation Life Shield.
Well, thank you. It's great to be back. And I think one of the questions that people often ask is, how does a rabbi get into the concrete business? How does a rabbi get into the bomb shelter business? And the way I answer that question is that sometimes we plan our lives and it's going in a certain direction, and then God comes along and says, actually, we're going to move you in this direction now, and I'm sure you can relate to this, and so can many of your viewers. And that's exactly what happened to me. In 2006, during the Second Lebanon War, there was a need for shelters, except not the kind of shelters where you run downstairs into a basement or into an underground bomb shelter, but something that you could run to quickly, that was nearby, and most importantly, accessible. And we realized at that point that the map was changing. The situation was changing. It was no longer going to be a situation where you had lots of warning. It used to be that way. Oh, there's going to be, a war. Let's all move down into the underground bomb shelter and bring your pajamas and lots of books. Now it was like you and I are having a cup of coffee or a meeting, or I'm running in the track, or I'm taking my children to kindergarten, or I'm praying in a synagogue, or I'm working in the field. Siren goes off, a matter of seconds to go to a shelter. I need something close by, leave my work on the table, seek shelter, wait for the danger to pass, and then return to my work. In other words, how do we help Israelis live as normal a life as possible in an abnormal situation? Because it is an abnormal situation to be disturbed and interrupted by rocket attacks. And we sat down with the Pikuda Orif, it's called in Hebrew, the Home Front Command of the Israel Defense Force. And we said, what do you need? And they said, we need your help to place shelters in Israel, in public areas where people can go and run to. And we took on that task, we took on that responsibility, and today we have hundreds and hundreds of shelters all over Israel in public spaces, synagogues, churches, mosques, by the way, schools, senior day centers. We even placed a shelter at a Magen David Adom outpost in northern Israel. And this is what we've been doing. Why? So that we can save lives, can protect the lives of Israelis, and when the rockets aren't falling, bring comfort and a sense of security on a day-to-day basis.
Now, I remember reading a story of a little girl, and I've told you previously, who couldn't, we have to understand, when you hear the siren, we live twice now in operation like that, and it's okay once, it's okay twice, but and we live here where we don't have very many, but the people who live near Gaza, or like it was during the Lebanon war, is like you have it many times in a day, and your body is hard on you. And I was reading the story that you said into the little girl, and she was traumatized, and she couldn't cope. And having a bomb shelter just changed her life, and it really touched me. So this is just...
Yeah, we need to understand that besides the physical harm, all right, that's the stuff that the news often captures, the attacks and all the physical evidence of an attack. There's something going on deep inside, though. There's a psychological injury, a wounding that's taking place. That's considered a real serious injury. Trauma, shock. These are, we both know
your soul.
Of your soul, your spirit has been scorched, and now you can't even move. You're paralyzed. You're physically paralyzed. You're mentally paralyzed. You're spiritually paralyzed by this trauma that's taken place. And this case that you're discussing is a perfect example. I know, for example, when I was speaking with a social worker recently for Netivot in southern Israel, and she told me that there was a teenage girl, in this case a teenage girl, who spent the entire war this past summer inside one of our shelters and would go out to use the bathroom, but otherwise she spent the entire time in there. She still needed counseling and therapy after the war, but the social worker told me that the amount of time that it would take for her healing to take place would be, and her recovery would be much shorter because the shelter was there for her. We see these examples time and time again. This is what we're here for.
Which is interesting, because when you think, it makes me thought about in the Bible when you say the Lord is your shelter and Tsur, your rock, is very much like that. Explain a bit how is
yeah, this is, you want to take a look, you want to Google, shelter, refuge. In Hebrew, the words are even more profound. Machaseh, the word machaseh in Hebrew, which means to shelter. Miklat, which we use the word casually in Israel as a bomb shelter, but a miklat literally means refuge. For example, Ir Miklat would have been a city of refuge that we hear about in the Bible and in the book of the prophets, especially in the book of Joshua. We talk about those cities of refuge being set up. Why? Because when you're in danger, you can go there and be safe. And so these words are the exact same words, Natalie, that are being used today for our shelters. Machaseh and miklat. Wow. And it's no accident that those words are there, and they're profound, because the Bible is clearly, Scripture is clearly teaching us, if you need to be safe, you need machaseh. And you need covering. And it's very interesting when I think of, and this is a reading from one of our own flyers here, one of our own brochures. And for me, when you have a flyer or a brochure, and you want to pick the phrase that most describes what you stand for. So for me, it was Psalm 91, verse 5. 91, verse 5, you will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day. You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day, Psalm 91, 5. And when I hear that, when I hear God speaking those words through King David, so my immediately reaction is, yeah, how? How do I not fear the terror of night or the arrow that flies by day? How? How? You've told me not to, but how? And then the next thing that I think of is help provide protective shelters for the children of Israel. God is he's having a conversation with us. He's saying, Natalie, don't fear the terror by night. And then our response back is how? And our response back to that is machaseh. Miklat, provide shelter. That's how we do that, and God smiles when that happens.
So you see, you can pray for Israel and you can help Israel. So this is wonderful. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So give us a bit more of how the people can help, what's happening already. That is not just in Israel. You have branches?
We have volunteers in many countries around the world. We're based in the United States, Canada. We have representation in England, throughout Europe, and also in Hong Kong, Philippines, Australia. We're all over the world. We're in 10 countries around the world with volunteers who are helping get support and make it possible for anybody who loves Israel, Jews, Christians, anybody who has a heart for Israel and wants to do something in a tangible, concrete way can do this. We're a non-government organization, so we're not part of the government. We are a volunteer-based organization, and we are a charitable organization, which means if somebody wants to do that, all they need to do is go to our website if they want to, and it's listed here on the show at operationlifeshield.org, and they can make a donation online. Every single dollar, euro, is used for nothing but shelters. We're very boring, we're a very boring mission. We're just about saving lives. That's it. We're just about saving, and we do that through shelters. People can be part of that and know that they are contributing and supporting directly, protecting the lives of Israelis.
So, Rabbi Shmuel, could you give us a story that can really explain to the people the importance to have a bomb shelter?
Sure. One of the stories that comes to mind, because I just had a chance to revisit this yesterday, it was at a moshav called Mavki'im, and it's located 6 kilometers north of the Gaza border. In other words, between Gaza and Ashkelon. And we were placing a small shelter beside a youth center, a center where teenagers would come to. And you have to see this
when you say small shelter,
this would be a bus stop shelter, like a bus stop shelter. And it still weighs about 30 metric tons, but so it's being gently, it's amazing, it's gently kind of being lifted into the air and brought down. And as it's being brought down, beside the youth center, there's a man beside me, and he's weeping. He's weeping. He's crying incredibly. And I'm thinking, okay, this is a very emotional experience, seeing the shelter, but weeping, this is really something. So, okay, we put the shelter down, and I turn to the man and I say, what's your story? And he says, take a look at the plaque on the youth center. So I look at the plaque on the youth center, and it says that it's donated in memory of this man's 11-year-old son who was killed in a car accident. And he had dedicated this youth center in his son's memory. He said, because of all the rockets that have been launched against this area, the Army told us we had to close the youth center, and it could not be used. So here's this youth center that I donated in my son's memory, closed. This shelter now will allow the center to become open now. So teenagers will be able to come and use this center as a place for activities and events, honoring the memory of my son's name because of the shelter that was just brought here. We have an expression in Hebrew, mitzvah goreret mitzvah. Mitzvah, to do to follow in God's commandments, an obligation for God. Mitzvah goreret mitzvah. One mitzvah brings another mitzvah. And so when we do things like this, when we honor, it is a sanctification of God's name, when we are protecting the nation of Israel, and we are doing things in the land of Israel to save lives, it naturally brings other mitzvahs along. It's amazing. And again, it's something that everyone can participate. I'm just the conductor in the orchestra or the band. It's really all the different musicians, all the different people all over the world who are part of that orchestra, part of that symphony of helping.
Amazing. You know what I've learned also by living here is that sometimes we say you save a life, but even you don't just save a life, because this is a potential for making also other lives. So it could be a generation. And I don't know, it's like sometimes we very short-sighted, but living in the country here and starting to know more the way of the Jewish people think, he gave a depth. And interesting enough, again, yesterday I was reading one Muslim was saying, oh, you love life, speaking to the Jews, and us, we love death. And I was like, oh my gosh, but it's so like, straight to the point.
Well, we see that at a point exactly. And one of the things that we saw very clearly this past summer during Operation Protective Shield was, every time rockets would be coming in from Gaza, so the news, right, the local Israeli news would say, everybody get to a shelter. And we had lots of shelters, plus we had Iron Dome. So we were looking after protecting lives. Still 73 soldiers, Israeli soldiers, lost their lives. And, 4 or 5
I think at the
civilians.
end it was 71.
71.
Because I was working on.
Still a great loss. The Palestinians, and I pray for them because they have leaders who are not looking out for their best interests. And those leaders are saying, when you hear Israeli jets come in or helicopter gunships coming in, and those are coming in for the purpose of taking out the rocket launchers, go and surround them. We want civilians surrounding. We want you to go to the rooftops. We don't want you to run away. We want you to go. And that became policy. I really hope that I get subpoenaed by the International Criminal Court in The Hague. I really want to go there, and I want to say to them exactly what you just said. We stand for life while they stand for death. Who's the war criminal here? Because what we're trying to do is protect life, including the lives of the Palestinians. When we say to them, hey, get out of the way, get out of the way. In Israel, we are putting shelters in order to do that, and that totally reflects our love for life. And it's true. We say, the rabbis taught us that when you save one life, it's as if you've saved 1,000 people because of all the generations.
Now
and when you
understand.
destroy a life, it's like you
Yes.
destroy, you kill 1,000 people. And even without having to wait for all the generations to come. Natalie, if you save a life, so that life that you just saved, that person has parents, and they have neighbors and friends and a community. So every life that you actually save, actually concentric circle, right, going outward, how about all the other people who are affected by that life that was just saved as well?
That's very true. This is amazing. Now, why you've been part also of the IDF, you've done the army here. So was it already something inside of you?
Well,
did it trigger something?
Look, when I was here initially with the IDF, it was during the Gulf War, and so Scud rockets were coming in, and in a sense, there was a little bit of almost a foreshadowing, or a little bit of God tapping me on the shoulder, saying, "You see these rockets that are coming in? One day you're going to be dealing with a way to protect Israelis from those rockets," and so that was almost like a foreshadowing of what would happen. And other work that I was involved with in Tzahal, in the Israeli army, and through the Home Front Command, had to do with helping civilians deal with whether it was gas masks or anything that had to do with passive defense. In other words, how do I protect myself, my family, my community from these incoming attacks? And this has been something that has been on my heart for many years.
So, and also one thing, like these bomb shelters, do they work for every type of, no, is it more for grade rockets?
So the shelters, look, you have to pick your battles. Our concern has to do with conventional weapons, Qassams, Grads, or Katyusha rockets, Scuds, that sort of thing. Those are the rockets that are most used. Those are the ones, these are rockets that are packed with shrapnel, with ball bearings and nuts and screws, and sometimes even with rat poison. And what will happen is that the rocket will hit, and as it hits, so then there's going to be a spray of shrapnel. It's indiscriminate, it's going in every direction. And we know for a fact that some kibbutzim that were hit in southern Israel, those rockets had rat poisoning in it. We know that for a fact because in this case it was my friend's dog who was hit by shrapnel. And so you figure, okay, he's got a little metal wound, no problem, you could have it removed, and but then the dog died, and when they did the test on the dog, they found that the metal piece actually had been soaked in rat poisoning. If that had hit a child or anybody, okay, so it doesn't have to hit a vital organ. All it has to do is enter the bloodstream, and rat poison is, as you know, causes someone to bleed to death, okay, and there's nothing you can do about it in that period of time.
You don't have anything anti-poison?
It happens in such a quick amount of time. You can't use a coagulant. So this is the problem. This is the type of enemy that we're dealing with, and We pray that they will really come to see the light and correct their ways and do tshuva and repent. But in the meantime, we need to save lives. I can also tell you, as far as other real life situations are concerned, and that is that when somebody knows that there's a shelter nearby, and this is one of the things that we wanted to be able to provide people with, is that they can now know that they can do things like send their kids to school. They can now go to work, which has other economic and social implications. If I know that my child's kindergarten does not have a shelter, you want to know something? I'm going to think twice about whether my child's going to go to school that day. What does that mean? That means that I'm not going to go to work, or my wife's not going to go to work, which means that at the end of the month, I'm not paying my grocery bill. If I'm not paying my grocery bill, then that could have all sorts of economic implications. All you need to do is miss 1 month of payments, and the spiraling down continues. That could have all sorts of other issues, including, unfortunately, anger and domestic violence at home, and so on and so forth. It has a ripple effect. The moment that I have a shelter at my child's kindergarten or school, I can now know that I can take my child to school, and I can go to work, which means life can continue, which means that economic downturn is not going to take place. So you can see the implications are rather widespread.
So you put some all around Gaza?
Yeah, we put them all around the Gaza area. Today, that area around Gaza is known as the 40-kilometer belt, 25 miles. It's very interesting. I say that interesting. It's interesting that when people identify where they live in southern Israel, they say, oh yes, I'm from the 40-kilometer zone. And everyone knows what that means. It means that rockets can hit you. That area affects 1 million people, Natalie. 1 million people come within that 40-kilometer zone. It's not.
And it means, like, in your head, you go to bed, you don't know, you go to take your shower, because we forget.
You can't
people who don't live in this kind of life, they don't understand.
They don't understand.
Yes,
you know, and I'm sure viewers can relate to this. You know, you're in the shower and you think you hear the phone ringing, and you go, "Oh, I think that's the phone," and I'm expecting an important call from my job or my teacher, and you turn off the shower, and oh, it wasn't the phone. Now imagine you're not listening to the phone. Imagine you're listening for a siren, and you're in the shower, and you think you hear the siren go off. Well, you want to know something? You know, people take 1-minute showers. You know, people go to the bathroom for 1 minute. I don't mean to be graphic, but you go in there and you go, okay, I need to get whatever I need to do in 1 minute, because I don't know what's going to happen. If the siren goes off, I need to be in a position where I can go and also help and collect my family and go to a shelter. And we know of cases also in Netivot where a father grabbed his 12-year-old daughter while she was in the bath, wrapped her in a big towel, and took her to one of our shelters just as a rocket came and blew up the house. Okay, and this is what it's about. This is what it's about. But your conversation, you can't have a conversation for more than a minute, knowing that a siren could go off and you need to run somewhere. And we want to make sure that you have a place to run to.
Gosh, I don't know how people cope. Do they have a lot of damage?
There's a lot of coping is very difficult in places like Sderot. Most of the people in Sderot have received some form of counseling today. You know, we hear the expression post-traumatic stress disorder. Well, take the P out of there. There's no post. It's just stress disorder syndrome. And people need to, thank God we have close-knit communities. And thank God we have a country where we take those issues seriously, where we don't just say, oh, I don't see any visible physical damage, therefore get back to your life. No, in this country, we know that the spirit can also needs healing. And in this country, we take that very, very seriously, and we do everything we can to help heal, both physically, psychologically, and spiritually.
This is very important. This is what I like here. It's like people know that they have a body, but they have a soul, and you need to heal both. Both of them can be damaged. Sometimes the soul and the body is not, and sometimes it's the opposite. It's interesting.
You ask any child, any parent, what brings you strength in Hebrew, and they will say, Esa einai me'aharim me'an yovo Ezri me'im Hashem oseh shamayim va'aretz. Where do I receive my strength? Right?
Strength comes from the heavens.
From the heavens and the earth, exactly. And this is what we do. We turn our eyes upward as we look forward.
Thank you. Thank you for giving us all of that. And you see, we can help, we can pray, and we can do things for Israel. And you can see during the program, we put the website. You can go, you can look, you can go with your prayer group, you can do with your church, you can do it yourself. It's like a great things to be able to help Israel, and not just to survive, but be able to thrive still and carry on, because we can't make it without Israel. We can't make it without Israel. We live here now, we can see things, and it's like we are living in the last days, as you know, and it's time for us to do what we have to do and take the responsibility for all of that. Rabbi, thank you again for coming and giving this opportunity, because it's a privilege that we can help Israel. And to you all around the world, we are so happy to bless you. We send you blessing from Zion. And don't forget, we are living in the last days.
You've been watching In the Last Days, a TV program with Martin and Natalie Blackham, the program that looks at Israel and the end times with teaching from a Hebraic perspective. If you would like to financially support the program or find out about conferences, meetings, or ministry products, then please contact us with the details on your screen. Visit our easy-to-use website at www.inthelastdays.com and register for our free e-newsletter. Get the latest news from Israel, product information, online video teaching, or watch today's TV program at a time that's convenient to you. Thank you again, friends and partners, for making this program possible.
See you same time, same station for the next program from In the Last Days.